Hey there, y'all. Welcome back to a special episode of True North Sports Talk podcast. And we're going to spend the next, half hour, 45 minutes talking about the World Series. That starts tomorrow night at 8 p.m. It takes place at Skydome in Toronto. And it's a 32-year-long drought since the Blue Jays were in the World Series. I remember hearing, and a lot of the audience will find that odd, but I remember hearing Joe Carter's home run on the radio because our family back then did not have cable. In fact, I think that might have been the year before we even had a TV. That's how long ago that was. So, for the first time, there will be World Series baseball north of the border tomorrow night. In Game 1, the Toronto Blue Jays will be taking on the defending champion, Los Angeles Dodgers. For our Jays up here north of the border, this is their third World Series. As mentioned, they won in 92 and 93. They haven't made it back since, so an entire generation of Canadian baseball fans have never experienced World Series baseball. Well, tomorrow night, that changes. The Dodgers, on the other hand, are trying to become the first team since the 98 to 2000 Yankees to win back-to-back World Series championships. They definitely feel like they're built to do that. They swept Milwaukee in the NLCS, and they've been resting while our Blue Jays battled through that 7-game series against Seattle. As you probably have not forgotten, George Springer's 3-run homer in Game 7 sent Canada into celebration mode. Not fully, but pretty close. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been playing like a man possessed. He's hitting .442 with a .930 slugging percentage this postseason. That is out of this world. The stage is set for one of the most compelling World Series matchups in recent memory. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm really looking forward to seeing this series. Not necessarily because the Dodgers are the big bad boogeyman, but simply because I want to see what the Jays are going to be able to do with this team. The Jays are a very, very pesky team that sticks around even when you don't think so. We're going to have a talk about rosters, pitching matchups. I know I've talked to some guys that around me, and I've said that I think, to me at least, in Game 1, you send Mad Max to the mound just simply to settle things down. Gosman pitched in Game 7. I mean, they could give him the ball because they've had days of rest. But I think just the factor of Max Scherzer having pitched in big World Series games multiple times before, it would be good, even if he's only 2-3 innings, get him out there, let them settle into the game, and then go from there. So the first issue that we're waiting for, and just a quick side note here, is that until 10 a.m. Friday morning, we're not going to know 100% sure on any of these roster things that we're talking about, simply because that's when they have to hand in their rosters for the series. Now, Bichette is the first big question mark in this series. He sprained his left knee, his PCL ligament, on September 6th in a home plate collision with Yankees catcher Austin Wells. This one was kind of on Bichette. Wells was doing what he was supposed to, but that was just not a good slide by Bichette. He's missed over 6 weeks of baseball. He wasn't able to be on the Division Series roster against the Yankees. And in the Championship Series, again, he wasn't able to be on the roster against the Mariners. After Game 7, reporters talked to Bo Bichette and asked him about playing in the World Series. He gave a real simple Bo Bichette answer: "I'll be ready." So what does that mean for the Blue Jays? Well, his season this year was nothing short of phenomenal. I'll mention something a bit later on, but before the injury, Bichette was having a real bounce back year. He was hitting .311, .357, .483. He had 18 home runs, 94 RBIs in 139 games. He had 44 doubles and was a 134 WRC plus. In his final 46 games, he was hitting .370 with a .423 OBP and a .989 OPS, 6 homers over that 46 games, and 41 RBIs. At that particular moment, before he went down with injury, he was leading the major leagues in hits. He had a 14.5% strikeout rate, which is really, really good, a 6.4% walk rate, and he had really good, usual what you'd expect from Bo Bichette plate discipline, and his hits a lot of times came up in big situations. So the dilemma now is, and this is the biggest decision heading into the series, do you put Bo Bichette on the World Series roster? Even if he doesn't play Game 1, do you put him on there for future games? If Bo Bichette does play designated hitter, maybe, simply because he hasn't played defense, that would push George Springer back into the outfield, either right or left field. Springer's being a DH during the playoffs, and he's dealing still with that foul ball he fouled off his knee. That foul ball, by the way, in case you didn't hear, had an exit velocity off of his knee of 55 miles an hour. Now, if you put George Springer back in the field, though, that would bring either Nathan Lucas or Addison Barger, possibly even an Ernie Clement, out of the starting lineup. And those guys have been huge for Toronto. Now, I don't necessarily like the idea of DHing Bo Bichette. They're talking about Andreas Jimenez possibly staying at shortstop, and from what I've heard, Bo Bichette, when he was taking ground balls today and yesterday, he was actually at second base, which would be a weird optic to see him out there at second base. I'm not saying he would be bad at it. I'm not saying it would be bad defensively. But having Andreas Jimenez at shortstop has worked out really well for the team since he moved over there. So the question will be, do they decide to keep him at short, move him to second? And if so, what other roster implications will there be? Now, obviously there's pros and cons to everything. So what would some of the pros be having Bichette back? Well, that's an elite bat who is one of baseball's best hitters and will continue to be so, you would think, coming back. He's an emotional leader and a clubhouse presence, if not quietly just goes about his business and leads by example. He's come up for the last 10 years with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. There's an amazing chemistry there, and they've been through it all together. Even through the first 2 rounds, he was there in the dugout with them. After the season, he's a free agent. Hopefully, and I'm sure Blue Jays fans would agree, that it won't be his last as a Blue Jay. Hopefully, Ross Atkins gets it done in the offseason, provided he's still here as general manager, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day. He's a dangerous contact hitter, and this is a lineup that already doesn't strike out much, and Bo Bichette only adds to that factor that makes this lineup that much more deeper. So, what are the cons to bringing him back? Well, he hasn't played in 6 weeks. He's had 0 game action of any kind, and the team has done well without him. George Springer has been nothing short of phenomenal, some would say heroic, as the DH. Jimenez has been rock solid at shortstop defensively, and there is a risk anytime you come back of re-injury or a bit of rust, diminished performance. We saw that a little bit with Anthony Santander, and it can also potentially create a chemistry disruption, although you wouldn't think so with this particular team. And the current lineup, it's been working really well. So if it ain't broke, should you fix it, right? However, if you look at the bigger picture of all of this, Bo Bichette was a huge part of getting here. All throughout the season, they used multiple different lineups on many different occasions. So I think for this particular team, that's not a big stretch to bring him back. He also hasn't been out nearly as long as when it was Anthony Santander. Or if you were to miraculously bring back a Jimmy Garcia. Those are much different dynamics than just being out since the beginning of September. In a moment, we'll take a look at what some of the insiders are saying in regard of Bo Bichette. So Ken Rosenthal, as we all know, and love that bow tie, he made a comment on foul territory, and he's talking about Bo Bichette. He said he's not going to be a part of their future. It's almost unquestionable that Andreas Jimenez will be their shortstop from here forward. If this is it for him, and if you feel that your team is better set this way going into the World Series, man, I don't know how you put him on. So that's a real interesting take from someone who is known to have very strong sources. He's been very accurate over the years. And that's a sad thing to hear from a Blue Jays fan perspective, that the team has already moved on from Bo Bichette. And I'm just not sure that that's the right direction for the team, really. He's been such a big part of it. He was a huge part of getting the team here. Yeah, he may not have been there during those crunch time moments, but some of them may not have been as crunch time with Bo Bichette there. Maybe they had a better cushion. Granted, with more of a cushion, maybe they aren't in that fight mode all the time and get this far. So it's really difficult to say. And based on Ken Rosenthal, this just isn't in the cards to have him play. He gets a ring either way, so he doesn't miss out on that. AJ Pierzynski, former player, former catcher. He said, "I know Bo Bichette is great, but I just don't know how they do this. Do you just say, 'Look, Bo, we're sorry you got hurt. We really do apologize. But we've got to go with what got us here.' And what got us here was him on the bench." Now, here's the ultimate insider in John Schneider. He's there all the time. Now, before Game 7 in the Seattle series, he said Bo had made significant progress, that he's been running, taking live at-bats, he's been testing the knee on the bases, and as I mentioned, he's even been said to be taking ground balls. The decision, as John Snyder says, will come down to medical clearance and whether John feels he'll make a difference in a positive way. John Schneider has shown that he'll make tough roster calls. He did so in keeping Bichette off the ALCS roster, even though they knew they needed him. Is there an emotional factor here? Well, this is Bichette's potential final series as a Blue Jay. Here, he and Guerrero have been the face of the franchise for 7 years and even longer in the minor leagues. The clubhouse wants him there. The fans want him. The question is, does the team need him? What is the most likely scenario in all of this? Well, Bichette likely will make the World Series roster. Probably doesn't start Game 1. He'll be available as a pinch hitter or a late game insertion if they need it. As the series progresses and he gets more comfortable and they figure out what to do with him, they could expand his role. All right, so let's talk about this Dodgers pitching staff. Now, if you're looking at 4 starters, I don't know that you find a scarier 4 starters than the ones the Dodgers are running out there. Blake Snell, he's just tough as nails. He had a 2.35 ERA in the regular season. He's 3-0 with a .86 ERA, 2 earned runs in 21 innings, starting with the wild card series. Like, holy jumping. They basically swept every series they played in so far. They swept the Reds, they swept the Brewers, and they just kept on trucking. So that's not looking good for a team that's had to scrap and claw just to get here. He's had 28 strikeouts. He's only had 5 walks. His last outing was 8 innings of brilliance against Milwaukee, followed up by Yamamoto with his 9 innings of brilliance. They only allowed 1 run between the two of them over, 17 innings. Like, that's just scary, top of the line pitching right there. In the NLCS Game 1 versus the Brewers, that was his 8 scoreless innings. He had 10 strikeouts. He did not walk anybody and only allowed 1 hit. He faced the minimum through 8 innings, and that is absolutely an elite performance. He's left-handed, which the Blue Jays at times, not always, but at times have struggled with, and that will make an interesting construction for a Game 1 lineup on Toronto's behalf. Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He's a righty, so that will ease things up a little bit. Man, he went 9 innings against the Milwaukee Brewers. The Dodgers will use the same 1-2 punch to try and get things off to the right start here. They've got elite strikeout stuff with excellent command. Gives LA back-to-back aces to start their series. And just from a Blue Jays perspective, when you're facing these two guys and then the next two guys that we're about to talk about, is these guys you have to be patient with. You got to foul off balls. You got to make them work the way you did against Seattle and New York. What I would love to see is Blake Snell and Yamamoto with 30 pitch first innings. You got to make them work. Unless you can put the ball in play, be patient, maybe take a strike, and just play small ball all the way along. You just got to, their bullpen's good, but you just got to get to that bullpen. You got to make them work. You got to be patient. Don't be swinging at balls that start off the plate and then farther off the plate like some teams are prone to do. Make them be in the strike zone. Make them be in places that you can hit the ball, and be patient. So behind that 1-2 of Snell and Yamamoto, you have a supporting cast which is just as strong as those first two guys, and any other team I would say would probably welcome having these two guys as their first two pitchers. You got Tyler Glasnow, who's another dominant starter who goes deep into games, followed up by Shohei Ohtani. And yes, that Shohei Ohtani pitched in the NLCS. He threw 6 scoreless innings with 10 strikeouts against Milwaukee. In that game, he also hit 3 home runs, which was a very historic performance. And he might pitch in relief at times if it's absolutely necessary. So, against the Brewers in the NLCS, between all 4 of them, they had a .63 ERA. They allowed 2 earned runs in 28 2/3 innings, 35 strikeouts, and completely shut down a very tough Milwaukee lineup. So what makes them so good? Well, each starter has multiple pitches, a lot of different looks, especially Blake Snell being a lefty. They have elite command. They don't walk a lot of batters on, and they're facing a team that doesn't strike out much. They have strikeout ability. They miss bats consistently. They have experience. They've been there before. And they have a rest advantage while Toronto has been battling. Their bullpen, Roki Sasaki, is their closer. He's a 23-year-old rookie who's emerged as LA's closer. He's got a 1.13 ERA in 8 postseason innings. He's only allowed 1 earned run. He's recorded the final out in 5 of LA's 9 postseason games. So you got to get to them before you get to him. He's got elite strikeout stuff and removes bullpen concerns the Dodgers may have had entering into October. Their relief depth, Tanner Scott may be returned to the World Series roster after emergency surgery. Dave Roberts says the bullpen will look almost exactly the same as the NLCS. One spot is being debated due to Toronto's right-handed power and overall bullpen ERA of 4.88 this postseason. That's not great, but it is manageable. So you got to get to that space between the starter and the closer. So, Toronto's offense, they don't strike out much. They're tied for the MLB postseason lead in home runs despite playing more games than the other teams. They haven't faced this caliber of starting pitching consistently yet. And Milwaukee, they shared Toronto's low strikeout contact hitting approach and got completely shut down by this Dodgers team. The Dodgers pitching staff will be the Blue Jays' biggest test. Hopefully they've been on their pitch machine like crazy, getting ready for this. Alright, so let's turn to the Blue Jays pitching some lineup scenarios, and just take a look at the Blue Jays side. Game 1 looks like they could be starting Trey Yesavage. The rookie right-hander, he gets the biggest start of his life, if that's true. 1-0 with a 3.21 ERA this postseason. He previously started ALDS clinching game 2 of the ALCS. Pitched in games where Toronto could clinch an AL East playoff spot, division series, and he has consistently shown that he is built for this. The highest pressure situations don't really seem to bother him that much, but it would be wise for the Blue Jays to keep him pitching in front of the home crowd. So if he doesn't start tomorrow night and starts game 2, that would be fine also, because both games are here in Toronto. You get him out there. He's shown that even if he gives up something, he settles down. He'll be a nightmare for this Dodgers team to navigate. And he has a maturity beyond his years. At only 22, 23 years old, his teammates and coaches are constantly, if you've paid attention throughout this offseason, talked about his composure, the fact that he doesn't get rattled by big moments. He's got veterans like Kevin Gausman and Max Scherzer around him to help him navigate this. Those two guys have also praised his mental toughness. He carries himself like an ace and could be a future ace of this club. Rotation depth is going to be a key in this series. So, Kevin Gausman came out of the bullpen in Game 7 on short rest after starting Game 5. Likely he'll start Game 2. Maybe they could push him back. And has been Toronto's ace all season long. He pitched really well against the Yankees. And you would expect nothing less, even against this deep Dodgers team. Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett will be wild cards in this series. They were both added to the ALCS roster for depth, and they will be available for starts, and as we saw with Bassett, multiple inning relief. They will lean on Scherzer's playoff experience, and it is invaluable. As I mentioned, I would probably start him Game 1 simply because of that. Bassett provides quality innings whenever you need them. He's talked about coming out of the bullpen and how he can ramp up his velocity because he's not out there for 100 pitches. And that just makes him even more dangerous. So the bullpen, is it a strength? Would some say it's a weakness? Everyone will be available and fresh after the 3 days off. They've had multiple left-handed relievers. I would say that the 10 ERA that the left-handed relievers are carrying right now is more due to Brandon Little and his inability in the playoffs. And Eric Lauer or Mason Fluharty have been much better in the playoffs than Brandon Little was, and they will be the ones leaned on to give Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman problems. John Schneider will have some difficult matchup decisions to make. Just a quick note about Shohei Ohtani. Throughout the regular season, he hit right-handed pitching and left-handed pitching about the same during the regular season. In the postseason, for some reason, left-handed pitching has given him a bit more trouble. Now, that being said, that bit more trouble is still better than your average Joe. It's just not up to Ohtani standards. In your right-handed relievers for the Blue Jays out of the bullpen, Jeff Hoffman will be available. He hasn't pitched in a few days, and that rest has always been good for him. Full bullpen depth will give them flexibility. Do we see Tommy Nance swing back in? Multiple arms who can pitch high leverage situations. You got Louis Varland. You got Sir Anthony Dominguez. You got Braden Fisher. And yeah, so scenario 1. If Bichette doesn't play, more likely for game 1 against Blake Snell and a lefty, you're probably going to have Vladdy at first base, Springer at DH, Alejandro Kirk catching, Varshin center field as always. You're going to have Clement, either and or Lucas and Barger. You're going to have Jimenez, possibly an IKF or a Miles Straw sighting. And if he plays, you could see, as always, you'll have Vladdy at first. If Bichette DHs, that would put Springer right field, left field. You might see Barger at third then. Kirk, Varsh, obviously in the outfield. Ernie Clement, probably at second base, unless it's Jimenez. And then you would have either IKF, Straw, one of those other two guys stepping in. Now, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he is obviously the biggest news for the Blue Jays. As we mentioned, 442, 510, 930 this postseason. That's an absurd number. 6 home runs. That's a franchise record in the postseason. He's only had 3 strikeouts all month. The Dodgers will have to decide either pitch to him and let him beat them, or walk him repeatedly and make someone else step up. His performance will likely determine, one way or the other, how Toronto goes throughout this series. Ernie Clement has been the X factor beyond Springer and Guerrero, hitting .429 with a 1.063 OPS this postseason. The 4th best among 86 qualified postseason batters. He's scored 10 runs driven in, 7 RBIs, bats 6 in the order, and gives them incredible depth. George Springer, Game 7 hero with the 3-run homer. His knee will hopefully stand up to the pressure he's putting on it. He's got the playoff experience. He's been World Series MVP before. And his veteran leadership will be critical. Dodgers lineup that we'll likely see, and some key matchups. Alright, let's get to it here. And the top of their order is Shohei Ohtani, who arguably best player in baseball. He hit 3 home runs and pitched 6 scoreless innings with 10 strikeouts in Game 4 of the NLCS. He'll likely be walked intentionally at times, and Toronto really can't let him beat them. Mookie Betts, he's been playing shortstop this year, bats second following Ohtani. He's got a very high baseball IQ. He makes smart plays that maybe don't show up in the box score. An extra base here, a stolen base there. He'll take extra bases, get good jumps. He takes good routes to the ball. And his current manager, Dave Roberts, said Mookie is a key player because he follows Shohei and protects him in that order. Will Smith, their catcher, has moved up to the 3-hole. Freddie Freeman is a classic veteran presence. You got Teo. He needs no introduction to the Blue Jays fans. And they are an extremely consistent team. They use the same 9 starters in all 4 games of the NLCS. There are not a lot of moving parts the way you might see with the Jays. Dave Roberts found a lineup he likes. Some maybe small shuffling up and down depending on matchups. But you can expect consistency from LA. Now, a guy we haven't talked about a whole lot with the Blue Jays, Davis Schneider, factors into this equation as well. We can't forget him. And Kirky doing Kirky things. Vladimir versus Blake Snell. And will they pitch to him? Walk him repeatedly? He was intentionally walked a lot in ALCS. The first time since 2016 someone was walked twice with no outs. And if they walk him, Toronto's other bats have to step up and move him over and get him in. If they pitch to him, well, he's Vladdy. He's going to do Vladdy things, break games wide open, have big moments at big times. And Toronto is tied for the Major League lead in postseason home runs. They have fewer strikeouts than the Yankees, Tigers, Cubs, despite playing more games. The erosion effect, they grind down starters. They have long at-bats. Milwaukee tried this approach, but for them it didn't work out. But can Toronto succeed where Milwaukee failed? Alright, so if games are close late, Springer's October experience is going to come into play big time. Sasaki has seemed nearly unhittable, but could a guy like Springer figure out a way to get to him? Who wins that battle could determine some really close games that you would expect at this level and at this time of year. Alright, so what are you, the fans, looking at? Let's look. Bichette World Series status. I know I've been looking at that. That dominates the search volume. People want real-time updates on whether he's going to play or not. We'll find out 10 a.m. tomorrow. Canadian fans really want to see him on the field. Tickets are sold out. Skydome's sold out. The secondary market prices are astronomical. I heard probably the most outlandish thing, that 4 tickets were worth $40,000 on the secondary market. The city of Toronto is hosting free watch parties at different places throughout the city, and all across Canada, interest is at a maximum level. People are looking for who the Dodgers are going to run out there as a pitching staff. They recognize that LA's rotation is elite. They think or look for, can anyone even hit off Blake Snell? Searches are up. Fans are studying the matchups. Obviously, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be a hot topic. World Series odds for those of you in the betting market. Vladdy's the betting favorite for World Series MVP. His postseason performance has been legendary. Provided that continues, I don't see why not. People want to know if he can maintain this level. They're looking at George Springer's Game 7 home run, rivaling Jose Bautista's bat flip. It was an iconic moment that sent Toronto to the World Series. Videos of that have millions of views. I heard the crack of the bat, said the fan who caught the ball. You have Shohei versus Guerrero, and that was a matchup a few years ago that is going to be revisited here. And when I say from a few years ago, I want to say 2021, maybe it was 2022. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. lost the regular season MVP, and who beat him for it? Well, with the Los Angeles Angels, it was Shohei Ohtani. So that's why that's being looked at as a matchup that everyone wants to see. This is two international stars on the biggest stage, Vladdy being Canadian as well as Dominican, and it's a perfect showcase for baseball's global talent. People are looking at the Blue Jays' 32-year drought ending. For folks up here and even the players that once played on that 93 team, it's an emotional storyline. There's historical context, as only 8 players on Toronto's 40-man roster were even alive in 1993. The Dodgers are looking for back-to-back championships. That's a big narrative for them. There's dynasty narrative in LA. I've been hearing some of their on-air presence out there. They've basically written off this as their World Series, that they are going back-to-back. I think that's putting the cart before the horse a little bit, as it were, because you still have to play the games. Now, yes, just because you walked all over Milwaukee, that doesn't mean you're going to continue to do so. So those talking heads that want to give this to LA right away, I don't like predictions. I don't make them. But the thing about it is, don't count out the Blue Jays. Right? This is a team that fights, it scraps, it doesn't give up. And they had one game that I can think of where coming back would be nearly impossible, and that was that 20-1 game. They only had one of those, and this is a team that is going to fight you. If you punch first, they will punch back. If they punch first, they will keep on punching. Ask the Seattle Mariners about that. So those talking heads that just want to write off the Blue Jays, don't get ahead of yourself. There are many strengths that will define this series. The Dodgers' advantages are the elite starting pitching and the top of their batting order. They have the rest advantage, and they have playoff experience. This is their 5th World Series in 9 seasons. Shohei Ohtani is the best player on the planet, arguably, and their bullpen has solidified with Sasaki as the closer. Home field advantage throughout this series goes to the Blue Jays, 1, 2, 6, and 7, and Skydome is going to be louder than anything the Dodgers have faced so far this season. Their contact hitting approach creates pressure, long at bats creates pressure, power throughout the lineup, and Guerrero Jr. playing at an MVP level, and they have the emotional momentum from Game 7. X factors, Bichette could be an X factor. Their bullpen performance in close games, one way or the other. The question will be, can Toronto solve Snell and Yamamoto? Can they solve Glasnow and Ohtani? Will the Dodgers' rest hurt them or help them? And the home crowd at Skydome, even in LA, is going to make a difference. Toronto is the first team since the 96 Yankees to lose the first 2 home games of a best-of-7 series and then win the series. The Blue Jays do have championship DNA, not in recent memory, but they do have it. The Dodgers are trying to join the exclusive back-to-back club. Now, just before we wrap this up, I saw an interesting bit of information today. And that explained that since 1988, there have been 4 instances of teams that played each other in the World Series. And each team, so the scenario is like what the Blue Jays and Dodgers are facing. So there was one team that had swept the previous series. And there was one team that had gone 7 games in the previous series before the World Series. That's happened 4 times since 1988. Do you know who has won every single one of those World Series? The team that played the 7 games has won all 4 of those scenarios. So, will that trend continue? Let's find out. Final thoughts tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, Skydome, Sportsnet. In the States, perhaps Fox, FS1. Game 1 of the World Series. The Blue Jays are representing an entire nation up here in Canada. They face a Los Angeles Dodgers team that is the defending World Series champions, who are trying to cement their dynasty. You'll have Blake Snell, Trey Yesavage, Shohei Ohtani, Vladimir Guerrero, the Dodgers' elite pitching versus the Blue Jays' contact hitting, experience versus momentum, dynasty versus drought. The Bichette decision we'll know by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And the stage is set. It is ready. After 32 years, Canada gets its first World Series action. And this is why we love October baseball. This is why these moments matter. And tomorrow night, history begins. So, that's our preview. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Get in on the conversation. Let's see what you guys have to say between now and tomorrow. We're going to do some 3-minute drills after each game, focusing on the game that just was. Hopefully that got you guys all ready. Use the hashtag TrueNorthSportsTalk in the comments. Let us know what you guys think. And as always, for complete coverage of the World Series, we'll be bringing you reaction, analysis of the coaching decisions, things like when John Schneider made that crazy decision to bring in Brandon Little. And we'll let you know, we'll give you updates as we find them out throughout the series. As we mentioned, tomorrow night, Game 1, 8 o'clock. In the States, it is on Fox, it's showing here. And Sportsnet, if you're in Canada, obviously you can find it almost anywhere online. And until next time, get ready for some World Series baseball. And let's see Skydome rockin'. Peter Barclay, see y'all next time.